6 months after discovering the resonance, Hyunwoo's mining operation had become the most successful in the sector. Ships arrived daily at the asteroid to purchase his incredibly pure minerals. The facility that had been abandoned for 40 years now bustled with activity and prosperity. But Hyunwoo knew he couldn't manage everything alone. The resonance had shown him mineral deposits throughout the entire asteroid, enough resources to keep dozens of mining teams busy for decades. He needed help, and he needed people he could trust with the secret of the crystal beings. The first person he contacted was Dr. Yoon-Ji Park, a xenobiologist from Earth who specialized in unusual life forms. He had read her research papers on silicon-based organisms and knew she would understand the importance of his discovery. Dr. Park arrived on a research vessel 2 weeks later. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and endless curiosity. When Hyunwoo first took her down to meet the resonance, her reaction was everything he had hoped for. "Incredible," she whispered, as the crystal beings sang their welcome songs. "They're not just alive, they're intelligent. This is the discovery of the century." Dr. Park spent weeks studying the resonance, documenting their communication methods and social structures. She confirmed what Hyunwoo had already suspected. Humans were uniquely suited to interact with these beings. "Our hearing range overlaps perfectly with their harmonic frequencies," she explained. "Other species hear distorted versions of their communication. To a Zephyrian, resonant songs sound like death wails. To Krulusians, they sound like battle cries. But to human ears, they're just beautiful music." The doctor helped Hyunwoo develop better communication protocols. She built electronic interfaces that could translate human speech into harmonic patterns the resonance could understand. Soon, conversations between humans and crystal beings became much more detailed and complex. 3 more humans joined the operation over the following months. Taemin Lee was an engineer who specialized in mining equipment. He designed new excavation tools that worked in harmony with the resonance needs, creating tunnel systems that enhanced their acoustic networks. So Young Choi was a geologist who helped map the asteroid's mineral deposits with incredible precision. Working with the resonance, she could locate rare earth elements and crystal formations that normal surveys would never find. Dong Hyun Park was a communication specialist who had worked on first contact protocols for the Human Colonial Authority. He helped establish formal diplomatic relations between the human team and the resonant community. The asteroid facility grew into something unprecedented, a joint colony, where 2 completely different species lived and worked together. The humans provided mining expertise and technological support. The resonants shared their knowledge of harmonic mineral processing and guided the excavation of new living spaces. News of the successful operation spread throughout human space. Scientists, miners, and xenobiologists requested permission to visit and study the resonant partnership. The facility became famous as proof of humanity's ability to bridge gaps other species couldn't cross. But the aliens of the galaxy reacted very differently. Zephyrian mining corporations offered increasingly large sums to buy the asteroid, but they refused to set foot on the surface themselves. Hegemony trade guilds wanted exclusive purchasing rights to the facility's minerals, but their representatives conducted all negotiations by long-range communication. A Krulusian spiritual leader arrived at the facility, demanding to speak with Hyunwoo about the unholy alliance with crystal demons. When Hyunwoo tried to explain that the resonants were peaceful beings, the alien priest performed purification rituals and warned of galactic doom. The cultural barriers were too strong for most alien species to overcome. Their ancient superstitions about underground voices and singing crystals made cooperation impossible. Only humans could work with the resonance without fear. This realization led to an unexpected opportunity. The Galactic Trade Union approached Hyunwoo with an extraordinary offer. They wanted to hire him as an independent contractor to investigate other haunted mining sites throughout the galaxy. Many asteroids and planets had been abandoned by alien mining operations due to similar supernatural phenomena. Singing rocks, underground voices, and harmonic disturbances had driven workers away from potentially valuable sites. If Hyunwoo could determine which of these locations contained friendly life forms like the resonance, it could unlock resources worth trillions of credits. The asteroid facility became the headquarters for this new venture. Hyunwoo renamed it Cheolsu Station, after his grandfather who had taught him that courage meant facing the unknown. With an open mind, Dr. Park established a research division to study silicon-based life forms and develop communication protocols for different species. Engineer Lee designed portable equipment that could detect harmonic life signs and establish contact safely. The first expedition was to a moon in the Arcturus system where hegemony miners had reported wailing stone giants 50 years earlier. Hyunwoo's team discovered a community of massive crystal beings similar to the resonance, but much larger and more ancient. These beings, which the team called harmonizers, had been alone for half a century. When human voices finally answered their calls, they responded with songs of such beauty and complexity that several team members were moved to tears. The second expedition found crystal networks in an asteroid belt that had been abandoned by Zephyrian corporations. The third discovered underground crystal cities on a mining planet where Krolusian workers had fled from voices of judgment. Each location told the same story. Intelligent crystal beings trying to communicate with alien miners, only to be misunderstood and feared. Each time, humans were able to establish peaceful contact and create beneficial partnerships. Word of humanity's unique ability spread throughout the galaxy. Other species began requesting human assistance with their own mysterious mining problems. Humans became known as the bridge builders, the species that could make contact where others failed. Hyunwoo stood in the main cavern of Cheolsu Station, surrounded by hundreds of resonants singing their evening chorus. The crystal beings had grown larger and more vibrant over the months of partnership. New offspring sparkled throughout the community, their young voices adding to the complex harmonies. Dr. Park approached with the latest expedition reports. 3 more successful contacts with silicon-based life forms, each one leading to profitable mining partnerships and peaceful coexistence. The trade union wants to establish a permanent first contact division, she told him. With human teams specializing in harmonic life forms, they're offering you the position of director. Hyunwoo smiled as the resonant song swirled around them. 6 months ago, he had been a failed cargo hauler with 50 credits to his name. Now he was leading humanity's expansion into an entirely new field of galactic relations. What do you think? Dr. Park asked. Ready to make this official? The resonants seemed to sense the importance of the moment. Their songs grew stronger and more beautiful, filling the cavern with music that spoke of friendship, partnership, and endless possibilities. Hyunwoo placed his hand on the nearest crystal formation, feeling its warm vibrations of welcome and joy. These beings had been waiting for someone to listen to them, to understand them, to value them for what they truly were. Tell the trade union yes, he said, but we do this right. No exploitation, no fear, no misunderstanding. We treat every crystal being as an equal partner. The resonance song reached a crescendo of approval, their lights flashing in patterns that seemed to celebrate the decision. Around the galaxy, other crystal communities waited in the darkness, singing their lonely songs and hoping for someone to answer. Humanity had found its calling among the stars. Not as conquerors or traitors, but as the species that could hear the music others feared. The species that could turn terror into wonder, isolation into partnership. Hyunwoo Kim had purchased an old asteroid for 50 credits and discovered what no miner would dare approach. In doing so, he had proven that sometimes the greatest treasures were found not in what others sought, but in what they were too afraid to understand. The song of the crystals echoed through the caverns, and for the first time in 40 years, they were no longer alone. The elevator descended slowly through Deep Shaft 12. Hyunwoo watched the depth counter climb steadily. 2 kilometers, 3, 4. The tunnel walls were smooth and well constructed. Whatever had scared the alien miners away, it wasn't structural damage or cave-ins. At 5 kilometers down, his suit's external microphones picked up the first sounds, faint at first like wind through distant caves. But there was no wind this deep underground. The sounds were rhythmic, almost musical. 7 kilometers. The sounds grew stronger. Hyunwoo could hear distinct tones now, low frequencies that seemed to vibrate through the asteroid's rock. His human ears found the sounds almost pleasant, like distant singing or the hum of a giant musical instrument. At 10 kilometers, the elevator shuddered to a stop. According to the depth readings, this was where normal mining operations had ended before the facility was abandoned. Below this point, only the bravest workers had ventured, and only for short periods. Hyunwoo switched to the emergency climbing system. Steel cables and climbing gear allowed miners to descend beyond the elevator's range. He attached his safety lines and continued down into the depths. The sounds were much clearer now. Multiple tones weaving together in complex patterns. Sometimes they grew louder, sometimes softer, but they never stopped completely. Whatever was making these sounds had been singing in the darkness for 40 years. 12 kilometers down. The tunnel began to change. The artificial walls gave way to natural rock formations. Crystalline structures jutted from the stone, catching his helmet lights and reflecting them in brilliant colors. Some of the crystals were enormous, larger than Hyunwoo's entire body. At 13 kilometers, he noticed something strange. The sounds seemed to change when he moved. When he stopped climbing, they grew softer. When he resumed descending, they became stronger and more complex. It was as if something was responding to his presence. 14 kilometers. This was where mining had stopped completely. According to the records, this was the depth where workers refused to go any further, where Commander Velthak had written his final log about voices calling from the depths. Hyunwoo's lights illuminated the end of the artificial tunnel. Beyond it, a natural cavern opened into darkness. The sounds came from inside that cavern, echoing and resonating through the space. He checked his air supply. Still plenty for several more hours of exploration. He squeezed through the opening into the cavern and gasped. The space was enormous. His lights couldn't reach the far walls or ceiling. Massive crystal formations filled the cavern like an underground forest. Some crystals were thin as needles, others thick as tree trunks. They stretched up into the darkness, creating a maze of sparkling pillars and arches. And they were all glowing. Soft bioluminescent light pulsed through the crystals in waves. Blue, green, purple, and colors Hyunwoo had no names for flowed through the formations like slow lightning. The lights pulsed in rhythm with the sounds, creating a symphony of sight and music. As Hyunwoo moved deeper into the cavern, the crystals responded to his presence. The lights grew brighter where he walked. The musical tones shifted and changed, as if welcoming him or trying to communicate. He approached one of the larger crystal formations, a towering spire 3 meters tall and half a meter wide. When he reached out to touch it, the entire structure flared with brilliant light. The sound it made was like a church bell mixed with a human voice, deep and resonant and somehow alive. "Hello?" Hyunwoo said aloud. The crystal's light pulsed brighter. Around the cavern, other formations began to glow in response. The sounds grew more complex, layering different tones together in patterns that almost sounded like a conversation. Hyunwoo realized he was not looking at simple crystal formations. These were living things. The bioluminescence, the response to his presence, the complex sound patterns. This was some form of life unlike anything humans had ever discovered. He moved from crystal to crystal, watching how they reacted. Each one had a different tone, a different pattern of lights. When he spoke, they seemed to listen, their sounds shifting to match the rhythm of his voice. When he hummed a simple tune, several crystals began to harmonize with him. The aliens had fled because they heard voices in the depths. But they weren't voices of the dead or ancient spirits. They were the voices of living beings trying to communicate, beings that had been alone in the darkness for 40 years, singing to themselves with no one to answer. Hyunwoo sat down next to the largest crystal formation. It towered above him like a pillar of living light. When he placed his gloved hand against its surface, gentle vibrations traveled up his arm. The crystal was warm, pulsing with energy and life. "You've been alone down here," he said softly. "The miners didn't understand what you were. They were afraid." The crystal's light shifted to softer colors, gentle blues and greens instead of the brighter hues. Other formations around the cavern responded similarly, as if his words had calmed them. Hyunwoo began to understand why the alien miners had fled. Different species had different cultural associations with underground sounds. Zephyrians believed singing stones were omens of death. Krolusians thought crystal voices were calls from their ancestral burial grounds. Hegemony species associated harmonic resonance with spiritual warnings, but humans had no such superstitions. To Hyunwoo, the sounds were beautiful and mysterious, not frightening. He could sit here and listen to them for hours without fear. The crystal beings, for that's what they clearly were, had been trying to communicate with the miners. But their attempts at contact had only increased the aliens' terror. The more the crystals tried to reach out, the more convinced the workers became that they were hearing supernatural voices. Hyunwoo stood up and walked deeper into the cavern. Hundreds of crystal beings filled the space, all glowing softly and singing their complex harmonies. Some were ancient and enormous, others young and small. They formed a community that had lived in this asteroid for who knew how long. When the miners had started digging, they had broken into the crystal's home. Instead of attacking or defending themselves, the beings had tried to welcome the strangers. Their songs were greetings, not warnings. Their lights were celebrations, not threats, but the aliens had misunderstood completely. Fear had driven them away, leaving the crystal beings alone again in their dark world. Hyunwoo spent hours moving through the cavern, learning to recognize different types of sounds and light patterns. The beings seemed endlessly curious about him. They followed his movements with their lights, harmonized with his voice, and created new musical patterns that grew more complex as time passed. When he finally prepared to leave, the crystal's song grew sadder. The lights dimmed as if they knew he was going away. Hyunwoo placed his hand on the nearest formation. "I'll be back," he promised. "I'm not afraid of you. I want to understand." The crystal flared with bright, joyful light. Around the cavern, hundreds of other beings responded with their own brilliant displays. Their song grew stronger and more beautiful than anything Hyunwoo had ever heard. As he climbed back up the shaft toward the surface, one thought filled his mind. He had discovered intelligent life in the depths of an abandoned asteroid. Life that other species had feared and fled from, but that welcomed humans with open arms. This was no longer just about mining rights or making money. This was about first contact with an entirely new form of life, and somehow being human had made all the difference. 3 days later, Hyunwoo's ship dropped out of faster-than-light speed. The asteroid appeared on his main screen, a giant rock floating alone in the darkness. No other ships were nearby. No radio signals came from the facility. The weeping sector was as empty and quiet as a grave. The asteroid was much larger than Hyunwoo had expected. 50 kilometers across, it looked like a small moon. The mining complex sat on the surface like metal insects crawling over stone. Landing platforms, processing buildings, and tall communication towers covered several square kilometers. "Soul's dream to Mining Complex 7 Alpha," Hyunwoo said into his radio, requesting docking permission. Only static answered him. He guided his ship toward the main landing platform. The facility's lights were dark, but his scanners showed the structures were intact. No damage from meteor impacts or equipment failures. Everything looked perfect, as if the workers had just stepped away for lunch. Hyunwoo landed his ship and put on his environmental suit. The asteroid had no atmosphere, so he would need life support to explore. He checked his air tanks and stepped through the airlock. The surface gravity was light, making each step bounce slightly. The main facility entrance stood 30 meters away, its doors sealed but undamaged. When Hyunwoo approached, the automatic systems activated. The doors slid open with a soft hiss. Emergency lighting flickered on as he entered. The corridor stretched ahead, clean and empty. His footsteps echoed in the silence. Everything looked normal, but something felt wrong. The facility was too perfect, too undisturbed. The first room he entered was a cafeteria. Tables and chairs sat exactly where workers had left them. Food trays remained on some tables, the meals long since dried to dust. Coffee cups sat half-empty beside data pads that still displayed work schedules from 40 years ago. Hyunwoo moved deeper into the facility. In the dormitory section, he found personal belongings scattered everywhere. Clothes hung in lockers. Family photos sat on bedside tables. One room had a card game laid out on a small table, as if the players had stepped away in the middle of a hand. Everything told the same story. The workers had left quickly, but not because of danger. They had simply walked away from their lives here, leaving behind everything they couldn't carry. The main control room was the strangest sight of all. Multiple screens showed facility status reports frozen in time. The last entries were all from the same day 40 years ago. Mining operations had stopped abruptly at 1500 hours. No explanation given. Hyunwoo accessed the facility's computer system. The power generators were still running at minimum levels, keeping life support and basic systems active. The mining equipment was in perfect condition, just waiting for someone to turn it back on. He found the geological survey data and whistled softly. The asteroid was incredibly rich in valuable minerals. Platinum veins ran through the entire structure. Rare earth deposits lay scattered throughout the rock. Deep inside, exotic crystal formations promised wealth beyond imagination. The deepest mining shaft, designated Shaft 12, had been the most productive. According to the records, it produced the highest quality minerals in the entire operation. The shaft went down 15 kilometers, almost to the asteroid's core. Then Hyunwoo found the personal logs of Commander Velthak. The Krolusian had kept detailed daily reports for the mining consortium. For years, the entries were routine. Production numbers, worker schedules, equipment maintenance, but the final weeks told a different story. Day 2847 of operations. One entry read, "Workers in Deep Shaft 12 report unusual sounds from the lower levels, possibly equipment malfunction. Maintenance team investigating." Day 2850. Maintenance found no equipment problems in Shaft 12. Sounds continue. Workers describe them as musical tones or humming. Some refuse to work the lower levels. Day 2853. Sounds from Shaft 12 growing louder and more complex. Workers call them singing rocks and believe they are warnings from ancient spirits. Productivity dropping as fear spreads. Day 2856. Most miners refuse to enter Shaft 12. Those who do work only brief shifts before becoming agitated and demanding to leave. The sounds seem to respond to our presence, growing stronger when workers are nearby. The final entry was recorded on the day the facility was abandoned. Day 2860. The singing from Deep Shaft 12 has become constant. Workers speak of voices calling to them from the depths. 3 miners have requested immediate transfer off station. The others petition for evacuation. I cannot maintain operations with a terrified workforce. We are abandoning the facility immediately. May the void forgive us for what we may have awakened in the deep places. Hyunwoo leaned back in the commander's chair, singing rocks. Voices from the depths. The aliens had fled because of sounds coming from the deepest mine shaft. Whatever they heard down there had scared them so badly, they abandoned one of the richest mining operations in the sector. He pulled up the technical specifications for Deep Shaft 12. The tunnel was 3 meters wide and descended at a steady angle for 15 kilometers. The lower levels contained the highest concentrations of rare crystals and exotic minerals. According to the surveys, the deepest sections had barely been touched when mining stopped. Hyunwoo made his decision. Whatever was making sounds in the deep shaft, he was going to investigate. He was human, not bound by alien superstitions about singing stones or underground voices. If there were valuable minerals down there, he would claim them. He spent the next several hours preparing. The facility's equipment was all functional, just powered down. He reactivated the main mining systems and tested the shaft elevators. Everything worked perfectly. In the equipment room, he found mining suits designed for deep underground work. The suits were built for Krolusian physiology, but the adjustable features allowed him to make one fit. He loaded extra air tanks and powerful lights onto a mining cart. As the sun set behind the asteroid's horizon, Hyunwoo stood at the entrance to Deep Shaft 12. The tunnel disappeared into darkness below. Somewhere down there, sounds had frightened an entire workforce into abandoning their jobs. He activated his suit's recording systems and stepped into the elevator. The ancient machinery groaned to life, carrying him down into the depths of the asteroid. Whatever was waiting 15 kilometers below, Hyunwoo Kim was about to become the first person in 40 years to find out. The elevator descended slowly, taking him deeper into the mystery that had created his opportunity. In the darkness below, something was waiting. Something that sang. Hyunwoo Kim stared at the fuel gauge on his ship's dashboard. The red warning light blinked at him like an angry eye. 50 credits. That was all he had left in his account. His cargo ship, Soul's Dream, needed fuel, repairs, and a miracle. The Galactic Trade Union had canceled his shipping contract 3 weeks ago. They said it was due to budget cuts, but Hyunwoo knew better. The alien corporations didn't like working with small human operators. They preferred their own kind. The big Zephyrian shipping companies with their fancy new vessels. Kepler Station floated ahead of him in the darkness of space. The old trading post looked as tired as he felt. Rust streaked its metal walls and several docking lights flickered weakly. This was where ships came to die, where desperate people made desperate deals. Hyunwoo guided his ship into a free docking bay. The station's gravity felt heavy under his feet as he walked through the corridors. Alien voices echoed around him, Vrixians clicking their mandibles, Krulusians growling in their deep voices, and the musical tones of the hegemony traders. The station master, an old Vrixian named Thektar, sat behind a scratched metal desk. His forearms moved across multiple screens at once. When he saw Hyunwoo approach, his large insect eyes looked up. "Human Kim," Thektar clicked. "You look troubled." "I need work," Hyunwoo said. "Anything that pays," Thektar's head tilted. "Work is scarce here. Most traders avoid this sector." He paused. "Though there is something happening in the lower docks today. A foreclosure auction. Auction? Mining rights? Someone defaulted on their loans." Thektar's voice carried a strange tone. Might be something for a desperate human. The lower dock smelled of oil and ozone. A small crowd gathered around a floating platform where a hegemony auctioneer stood. His blue skin gleamed under the harsh lights as he read from a data pad. "Next item," the auctioneer announced. "Mining Complex 7 Alpha. Complete asteroid facility with processing equipment, living quarters, and active mining permits." Hyunwoo pushed closer. An asteroid mining facility could be worth millions if it had good deposits. Several wealthy-looking aliens stood near the front. Zephyrian corporate executives in expensive suits and hegemony trade masters with golden jewelry. "The facility is located in the Weeping sector," the auctioneer continued. "Grid reference 2847 Delta. Bidding starts at 50 credits. Something strange happened. The crowd went silent. The Zephyrian executives stepped backward. One of the hegemony trade masters made a religious gesture and walked away quickly. 50 credits, Hyunwoo called out before he could think. The auctioneer looked surprised. "Do I hear 60? Nobody spoke. The aliens in the crowd stared at Hyunwoo with expressions he couldn't read. Some looked confused. Others seemed frightened. 50 credits going once, the auctioneer said. Going twice. He paused, looking around the silent crowd. Sold to the human. After the auction, Hyunwoo approached the auctioneer to complete the paperwork. The blue-skinned alien seemed nervous as he transferred the mining rights to Hyunwoo's name. "You are certain about this purchase, human?" the auctioneer asked. "Why wouldn't I be?" The auctioneer glanced around, then leaned closer. "The Weeping sector has a reputation. Ships avoid it when possible." "What kind of reputation?" "Strange signals. Unexplained sounds on radio frequencies. Some say the area is cursed." The auctioneer shook his head. "Probably just old spacer tales, but the previous mining operation abandoned the facility 40 years ago. Left everything behind." Hyunwoo took the deed and walked back toward his ship. In the corridor, he passed a group of Zephyrian miners. One of them grabbed his arm. "Human," the alien said in broken standard. "You buy the singing rocks?" "I bought a mining facility." The Zephyrian's eyes went wide. "Singing rocks bring death. My grandfather tells stories. Voices from the deep places." "It's just a mining operation," Hyunwoo said. The alien released his arm and stepped back. "May your ancestors protect you, human. You will need their strength." Back on Soul's Dream, Hyunwoo studied the facility records on his computer. The asteroid was huge, nearly 50 kilometers across. The mining complex included everything needed for a full operation: ore processors, living quarters for 100 workers, and deep mining shafts that went down 15 kilometers. The geological surveys showed incredible mineral wealth. Platinum, rare earth elements, and exotic crystals filled the asteroid's interior. According to the records, the facility had been highly profitable until it suddenly shut down 40 years ago. Hyunwoo found the final operations report. It was filed by Station Commander Velthak, a Krulusian who had run the facility for the Hegemony Mining Consortium. The report was short and strange. "Operations ceased due to worker unrest," it read. "Unusual acoustic phenomena in Deep Shaft 12 causing psychological distress among crew. Recommend immediate evacuation and facility abandonment. Request no further mining operations at this location." Acoustic phenomena. Sounds that scared alien miners so badly they abandoned millions of credits worth of equipment. Hyunwoo had heard stories about aliens and their superstitions. Many species had cultural fears about underground sounds or crystal formations. Humans didn't share those fears. He punched the coordinates into his navigation system. The Weeping Sector was 3 days away at his ship's maximum speed. 3 days to find out what scared an entire mining operation into abandoning a fortune. The fuel gauge still showed red, but Hyun Woo had enough to reach the asteroid. If the facility was as valuable as the records indicated, he could sell the mining rights to a larger company and make enough money to get back on his feet. Seoul's Dream pulled away from Kepler Station. Through the viewports, space stretched endlessly in all directions. Somewhere out there, an abandoned asteroid waited with its secrets. As his ship jumped to faster-than-light speed, Hyunwoo wondered what sounds could be frightening enough to make hardened miners flee. Whatever they were, he would find out soon enough. The Weeping Sector lay ahead, and with it the answer to his problems. Or the beginning of something much larger than he could imagine. Hyunwoo Kim was about to discover that sometimes the best opportunities came from what others were too afraid to touch. And sometimes being human was the greatest advantage of all. Baeko limped through space, its hull scarred and bleeding atmosphere from dozens of wounds. Half the ship's systems were down, and Tae-ho could feel Hana's artificial intelligence struggling to keep them alive. Around them, the wreckage of the battle floated in the darkness. Pieces of human and alien ships mixed together in a graveyard of metal and dreams. But they were still alive, and that was more than Kazxthul had expected. Surrender now. Admiral? The alien overlord's voice crackled through the damaged communication system. Your ship is dying. Your moon bases are destroyed. There is nothing left to fight with. Tae-ho looked around Baeko's bridge. Most of the displays were dark and sparks flew from damaged control panels. Through the cracked view screen, he could see Earth hanging in space like a blue jewel. So close, and yet he had failed to protect it. Admiral. Hana's voice was weak, her holographic form flickering. There is something you need to know. Something the original Admiral planned for this moment. What are you talking about? Tae-ho asked. The real plan, Hana replied. The one that took 500 years to prepare. It was never about winning this battle. Images began appearing on the ship's remaining screens. Not images of Earth or the alien fleet, but views from across the galaxy. Dozens of worlds that had been under hegemony control for centuries were now in open rebellion. On Cathera, Thrakari warriors had overrun their alien guards and seized control of the planet's orbital defense platforms. The massive creatures, each one standing 3 meters tall with crystalline skin that could deflect energy weapons, had turned those platforms on hegemony supply ships trying to flee the system. On Veltran, the peaceful Valonians had revealed a capacity for warfare that surprised everyone, including themselves. Their plant-like bodies could regenerate from almost any wound, making them nearly impossible to kill. They had captured every alien outpost on their world within hours. On Nexus 7, the enslaved scientists had done something even more devastating. They had accessed the hegemony's central communication network and broadcast the locations of every slave world. Every secret base, every hidden fleet to resistance movements across the galaxy. How is this possible? Tae-ho whispered. The quantum virus, Hana explained. When the original Admiral sacrificed himself 500 years ago, he didn't just upload his memories into your family's DNA. He planted quantum viruses in every hegemony system that his ships encountered during that final battle. But viruses need activation codes, Tae-ho said. They need someone to turn them on. They were programmed to activate when Earth was attacked again, Hana replied. The moment Kazxthul's fleet entered this solar system, every virus in the hegemony network woke up. They've been spreading information and coordination protocols to resistance groups for the past 3 weeks. Tae-ho stared at the screens showing rebellions across dozens of worlds. He planned all of this. The original Admiral knew this would happen. He hoped it would happen, Hana corrected. The plan required the hegemony to become overconfident, to spread their forces across too many worlds, to trust their control too much. It also required them to return to Earth with their main fleet, leaving their other territories vulnerable. On the screen, new reports were coming in every second. The Kasi Collective had reclaimed their homeworld and 3 colony systems. The Deltaran Empire, thought extinct for 3 centuries, had revealed hidden fleets that were now striking at hegemony bases throughout their former territory. Even species that Tae-ho had never heard of were joining the uprising. This is impossible, came Kazxthul's voice again, but now it sounded different. Frightened. My empire spans half the galaxy. A few rebellions cannot threaten us. Check your fleet strength reports, Taeho suggested. There was silence for several minutes. When Caxthul spoke again, its voice was filled with a rage so pure it was almost tangible. You knew, the alien overlord hissed. You knew that bringing my main fleet here would leave our other territories undefended. The original admiral was very good at thinking ahead, Taeho replied. He studied your species for 3 years before the first battle. He knew that hegemony psychology demands overwhelming force. He knew you would come back here with everything you had, seeking revenge. And while we were focused on one human world, your viruses were preparing every slave species we control to rise up at the same moment. Caxthul finished. Clever, but ultimately pointless. I will still destroy Earth, then I will return and crush every rebellion. With what? Taeho asked. More reports flashed across Bako's screens. The hegemony's fuel production facilities on Gamma 7 had been destroyed by escaped Thrakari slaves. Their weapon manufacturing centers on Delta Prime were in the hands of Valonian rebels. Most importantly, their shipyards in the Omega sector had been captured by a combined force of liberated species. You can destroy Earth, Taeho continued, but you don't have an empire to go back to. Your fleets are trapped in hostile systems. Your supply lines are cut. Your slave workforce has become your enemy. For the first time in 5 centuries, Overlord Caxthul felt something it had almost forgotten. Fear. Impossible, it repeated, but the word had lost all conviction. Actually, it's just good planning, said a new voice on the communication channel. Taeho turned to stare at his screens in amazement. The sensor display was showing a new contact, a ship that had not been there moments before. The vessel was sleek and familiar. Hyunmu, Lee Dongwook's stealth ship. I thought you were destroyed, Taeho said. I was supposed to be, Dongwook replied, but Hyunmu's AI had other plans. It turns out that disappearing into hyperspace at the right moment was part of the original strategy. What do you mean? While you were keeping Caxthul busy here, I was delivering activation codes to resistance leaders across the galaxy. The quantum viruses could spread information, but they needed someone to coordinate the actual timing of the rebellions. On the alien flagship, Caxthul was receiving the full scope of the disaster. Its empire, built over thousands of years, was collapsing in a matter of hours. Worlds that had been secure for centuries were now in enemy hands. Fleets that had seemed unstoppable were being destroyed by former slaves using weapons and tactics they should not have possessed. You have won this round, humans, the alien overlord finally admitted. But this war is not over. We will rebuild. We will return. No, Taeho said quietly. You won't. The final part of the original Admiral's plan activated. Across the galaxy, the liberated worlds were not just fighting for their freedom. They were forming alliances, sharing technology, coordinating their efforts into something that had never existed before, a Galactic Liberation Council. For the first time in their history, the oppressed species of the galaxy were working together instead of fighting alone. The Thrakari's military strength combined with Valonian regenerative medicine and Kasi technological innovation. Dozens of species, each contributing their unique abilities to a common cause. The galaxy has changed, Caxthul, Taeho continued. Your empire was built on keeping everyone isolated and afraid. But now they're united. Now they know they can win. The alien fleet began to withdraw, their massive ships retreating toward the edge of the solar system. But they were not escaping. They were simply moving to a safer distance while Caxthul tried to comprehend the magnitude of the defeat. This is not possible, the Overlord said again. One species cannot plan on this scale. One species didn't, Taeho replied. Every species you ever enslaved contributed to this plan. Every rebellion you ever crushed taught us something new. Every world you destroyed made the others more determined to stop you. The original Admiral didn't just plan Earth's defense, Hana added, her voice stronger now as Bako's systems came back online. He planned the liberation of the galaxy, and he understood that humans couldn't do it alone. On Earth, Defense Coordinator Hana watched the alien fleet retreating and the rebellion reports flooding in from across space. Around her, world leaders were trying to process what they were seeing. We did it, President Chen whispered. Somehow we actually did it. No, Hana corrected, watching Taeho's battered ship on her displays. He did it. All of them did. The Admiral from 500 years ago, and the one fighting today. In space, Tejo sat back in his command chair as Baiko's repair systems began fixing the battle damage. Around Earth, the wreckage of the fight drifted in the darkness, but it no longer looked like a graveyard. It looked like the birthplace of something new. "What happens now?" he asked Hana. "Now humanity joins the Galactic Liberation Council as an equal member," she replied. "The age of empires built on oppression is ending. The age of cooperation is beginning. And the hegemony will either adapt to the new reality or be swept away by it," Hana said. "Either way, they will never again be able to threaten entire civilizations." Tejo looked out at the stars, where millions of beings were celebrating their freedom for the first time in centuries. The original admiral's memories were quiet now, their purpose fulfilled. But Tejo could feel their satisfaction, their pride in a plan that had taken 500 years to complete. "Mission accomplished, Admiral," Hana said softly. "Humanity's watch has ended. The galaxy is free."